Because like I always say, questions, not only are they a powerful part of my life, but they're a powerful part of how we can bring out the best in others. Having run a life coach school now for, it's been almost 2 years, really helping develop those coaches once they graduate into master coaches. People ask me all the time, like, Mark, what are the best questions that you use, not only for yourself, but also for the people that you're trying to elevate, you're trying to help, and how is it that you're able to get them massive results? Now, the answer is I'm not able to get them massive results, but what I can do is I can ask them powerful questions that brings out the best in them, but you have to make sure you ask them in a very specific way. That's literally why we've created our Push Coach Certification School, because it takes practice. Ask all of the people who are currently going through right now. It's not as simple as just having the questions. It's also like actually making adjustments as you go and like really thinking on your feet. Now today, what I've decided to do is I put together my 10 best questions. And it's not just me, it's also Teresa. But as you can see, I don't have my headphones on because today she got nominated to be the soccer mom for the team, which means she gets to go in and have a whole ton of fun with a bunch of 13 and 14-year-olds not listening to her. And I get the beautiful pleasure of being here with these amazing people who are here on our call so I can dive into these 10 powerful questions. So she has shared 5, I've shared my 5. We're going to elevate them and we're going to bring it here to you live. So before we do that, I want to take a quick roll call to see who is here. We have a lot of Inner Circle members here. Looks like Shelly and Amber is here. If you are here, definitely pop in. What's going on? Of course, Kurt is here. That's the reason why this is all working flawlessly in the background because of him. But I want to welcome you guys to Modern Leadership. This is the first time you've ever heard from us. This is where we help people become modern leaders. We help them become modern leaders so they can excel by creating massive results in the world without having to sacrifice family time or burn themselves out in the interim. How we do that is short, quick tip videos on Mondays and Thursdays and longer episodes on the weekend like this one. We can dive in deeper into a very specific topic and give you the best of us live. Now, we also have this thing called the Inner Circle. If you have not heard about the Modern Leadership Inner Circle, you'll see a lot of the people who are here. And I'm actually going to go through some roll call real quick of the brand new people who joined us this week. But it is a group of community, of networking, of like-minded business and leadership professionals who want to continue to get after it, who want to share their knowledge with the other members on the team and elevate themselves in the process. If you're somebody who is an entrepreneur, a business owner, or a leader, and you're looking to make sure that you're in the right room, that is how you can do it. You can join our Inner Circle. How you do that is below here. Below this video, you'll see a join button. It will share some of the different levels of the Inner Circle that we have there and take and dive into the one that you think is most powerful for you, which for sure, most of you guys is the elite level. We have our first Q&A with people of the Inner Circle specifically at the end of, at the end of the month on Friday. Super pumped about that. Okay. So let's dive into these questions. Actually, first, before we do that, I want to welcome a bunch of new members to Inner Circle. We have Shelly. What's going on, Shelly? I knew you were going to be a part of the Inner Circle, Shelly. Shelly and Stephanie and Michelle, Danielle, Tiffany, Steve, Jerin. I hope I pronounced that right. I know I just talked to you this morning. Joe Marie, Amber, Aaron, Carmen, Laura, Sandra, Trisha, Cassie, Eric, Anne Marie. Let me scroll down. Dominique, Julie, and of course, Kurt and Teresa. So guys, welcome to the Inner Circle. Super pumped to be on this journey with you. Okay, let's dive into these questions. Now, when it comes down to questions, what is so powerful about questions is you can help people find what the answers are that are already living in the inside of them. One of the things that Josh Coates, who's my mentor when it comes to the life coaching and business philosophies that he leads with, that he talks about is everybody has the answers already living on the inside of them. It's just, are you, number one, able to ask yourself the right questions to pull it out? Or are you able to lean into a coach to get you to pull out the best? Now, I call myself a life and legacy coach for entrepreneurs, but in reality, using life coaching is the skill that allowed me to lose 100 pounds, to leave my full-time job. When I was working as a police sergeant, elevate up the ranks, be able to lead up and down the chain of command, be able to inspire and motivate people, get them to take action, make sales, all of these kind of things have to do with asking really powerful questions, because I'm not leading somebody to where I want them to go. I'm leading them to where the best path is for them. And a lot of times it just happens to be where I think the best path is for them, but not all the time, but it still revolves around asking questions. Now, I'm going to share these 10 questions with you. We're going to dive into a little bit deeper of why we have these questions, why they're this way. But in reality, if you get to this point, you're like, you know what? I really love these questions. I'm going to start using them, and I hope you steal them and actually use them. But the follow-up to these questions would be a part of what we do inside of our life coach certification, where we teach you how to dive into this head versus heart, really be able to have a structure called the push method that we use to be able to have this universal leadership tool to walk anybody through that situation, okay? All right, that being said, we've broken these questions into 2 different pieces, all right? The first set of 5 questions has to do with identifying what you or what your client or what your kids, whoever you're talking to, what they really want. If you are leading, you're leading in your career, you're leading wherever, you have to first identify where the people that you're leading want to go. Like, what do they really want? See, sometimes we bypass this and we get this kind of messed up. And we're like, well, naturally, they're going to want this. And we think that they want something, or we try to steer them in the direction of where we want. And it always backfires because there's a difference between pushing somebody in that direction and getting them to come to their own conclusions. They have more buy-in if you're willing to ask them the questions to lead them down that path. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today, okay? So the first question that we're going to talk about is like, when you figure out, or when you're actually having a conversation with yourself or with somebody else, is you got to find out what specific goals they want to achieve in personal and business life, and also why. So sometimes what people do is when they first start to hear this question of like, what is it that I truly want? They're like, well, I don't know what I want. And then we can reverse engineer it. We can talk about goals, which is a lot of times will help people identify what they really want. Now, it's not what everybody else says. We ask them, what is it that you truly want? And you'll kind of see if you're in a really good coaching session, you'll see if they start to like portray what their family wants or what their parents wanted or whatever, like, well, my parents wanted me versus what they truly want. And so really diving in and having some way of framing a question so they can remove all of the obstacles, remove all the head voices that would come up. If I could just hand you a goal, what would that goal be? Now, as a life coach, it's important if you are a business and life coach that you understand what your client wants. Otherwise, you'll never be able to help them get it, okay? Because when they tell you what they truly want, that means in times of head voice, when they can get off track, it's very easy to bring them back and remind them of the mission. So you're finding out what is your mission, what is your goal, and why. And when you ask that why, it helps you use that firepower because remember, they're not telling them, they're telling you, I want to do this for my family, for freedom, to make a bigger impact, to buy a home, to do all of these things. I want to change my generation forever. Like my family lineage is forever going to be changed because I'm doing this. You can actually now use that as their fuel when they start to get off track, but also to use it to ask them to read it every single day so they can remind themselves of what they're fighting for. So that is the first question in almost all of our coaching sessions, especially for our breakdown session, which is the first call that we have as a life coach with them, is like, what are your specific goals? What do you want to achieve and why? Now we have 52 different ways of asking that question, but the generalities is that. Now, if you're one of our life coaches, you have our workbook, you have all the ways of doing that, just follow that. But for this, it's just figuring out what they want and why. The second question, and this is kind of like one of this solving problems in advance, because I always love to solve problems in advance for clients. They think that I'm like Yoda, but in reality, they already know what the problems are going to be. It's just that they were too afraid to kind of like bring it up before the conversation, or even bring it up because they thought maybe it would get them off track if they knew it. But in reality, the power is knowing it. And that is like, what are the main challenges that have been preventing you from achieving these goals? So what are the main challenges that have been preventing you from achieving these goals? By asking them the question about what they really want, what's going to immediately happen after they tell you what they want, they're going to now think of all the reasons why they can't have it, why they're not going to be successful, and why this isn't possible for them. And you want that to come up, all right? As a life coach, we don't want, or as a leader, especially, I keep saying life coach, but I mean leader and life coach. As a leader and life coach, we don't want to just pretend like things don't exist. You have to call out the elephant in the room. And when somebody gives you their head voice, you want to actually explore that a little bit to get them to see how it doesn't even make any sense. How logically it's like isn't even something that like if we pull it out of your brain and see it on paper, it's going to be like, this doesn't even make sense. Why am I even continuing to believe this? And if you're too afraid to do that and you jump over into cheerleading mode, it's not going to be too helpful. So that's why you have to ask them, what are the main challenges that you're going through or that have actually helped you back from achieving these goals? The third question are, what are some things you believe about yourself that you feel are holding you back? Now, we have a push method for this, but as life coaches in general, we can ask questions, and leaders, we can ask questions about like, what do you think it is that's actually holding you back? What is a belief that you have? What is a story that you're telling yourself? However way you want to communicate that. We have certain ways in our life coach certification, but really being able to dive into what is it that you feel is holding you back? What are those thoughts? What are the stories telling you as to why this isn't possible for you? Because once again, when we can identify them, then we can help them get past them. The next question is, what strategies or habits have worked for you in the past? Sometimes when you don't have an experienced life coach, what they will do is they will just talk about hypotheticals, things that potentially could happen in the future. And that's a great place to start. But as a life and business coach, I feel like it's important for us to have multiple different ways of actually being able to help serve people. One of those ways is using the best of the past. So they've had moments, they've had times where they've been on point. They have had situations where they actually made really good decisions and they've actually gotten results and were motivated and were excited and were inspired. And really bringing that back to light will give them some of the universal things that they did in that process to be able to move forward, which is why asking them, what are some things that have worked in the past when you felt most on point, when you've been taking massive action, when you've been helping a lot of people, what are some things that you were doing? Who were some of the people that you were around? What were you learning? How were you growing? What were you reading? And really diving into those extra questions, we'll find out what was the path that I took before to get me that? And how can I move that path over here to this different area, okay? Now, the fifth thing is, and this is a great visioning one, is how do you envision your work-life balance? And what steps can you take to move closer to that vision? So sometimes when people first start off on a one-on-one session with me, they start telling me about all the things they want to do. They want to do this, excel in this, be a great parent, be a great spouse, be great at work, be great over here. And then you can kind of see when it sets in of oh man, I don't know how I'm going to do all that. That's a lot. I don't know if I have the time or the energy or anything to do that. And what that does is it gets you trapped in your head voice where there's no possible outcome. But if you can ask a question of if you could paint a picture of exactly how this would work out, how would it work out where you would feel it would be a amazing kind of synergy between your business and your personal life and your goals and all of these things in alignment, and taking care of yourself, paint an amazing picture for me. What would that look like? Now we're going out into the future and we're able to paint that. But when we paint that, we can now begin with the end in mind. Okay, so I work this many days. I do this business this many days. This is how many hours I spend with my family. This is how often I'm getting rest and sleep. This is what, and they can paint a picture. And now what it does is it gives them this sign of hope of maybe this is possible. Maybe if I sit down and I work it out and now I begin with the end in mind and then work my way backwards, it is 100% possible for me to do. And this is one of those realizations, is asking them a question about I want you to envision what the perfect balance would be. I want you to what the perfect business to career ratio would be. I want you to think about what the perfect time with family to business ratio would be, and tell me what that looks like. And you can paint a picture. Now, what's awesome too about this question is sometimes you realize that you actually don't want that perfect balance. Sometimes you realize maybe it's a little bit off. From what I even verbalized and thought about right now, it's not in congruence with what I actually want. So maybe I can make these adjustments here. This is a really great question to pull out that stuff. And once again, it's not you having the answers, it's you asking the questions and them identifying these key things by you saying those things and asking them those questions, all right? So those are the 5 questions when it comes to identifying what people really want and why. Now, the other 5 questions, which were my questions because I love these questions the most, is how to power through struggles so that you can create the life that you want. So here's my 5 best questions related to that. Now, once again, these are all questions that I usually will expand on in the call, but I wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that I ask people on calls that give them not only aha moments, but get to find the answers living on the inside of them, okay? The first one is, they're having a struggle. They're going through a situation where maybe something on the outside has happened. Maybe somebody else has said something or done something that's not in congruence with what they wanted them to do. I asked them, what part did you play in this? Meaning, what part of this is under your control? This question is a great way to reframe it, because when we give power to the outside, to the facts, to what somebody did, to what somebody said, or somebody didn't do, or somebody didn't say, or nobody showing up for your webinar, or whatever that is, now we give our power away. So we can't control anything at that point. It also is we need to take ownership of it if we do want to control it. So if somebody didn't do or say something or whatever, nobody showed up for the webinar, when we can take control of it and say, what parts do I have to play? Well, I guess I could have done this beforehand, and you know what? I can learn this afterwards, and maybe next time I'll try this, and then I'll try this, and maybe I can make an adjustment over here. Your brain now goes into heart mode, which is like you're taking actions that's in congruence with that was supposed to happen. You were not supposed to get anybody to show up in that specific webinar or whatever, and now you're trying to learn from it, but you're learning things because you're in your heart rather than in your head. Because if you're like, well, those people didn't show up, those people didn't sign up, there must be something wrong or whatever, it's you're giving power away to the outside. So when I ask them, what part did you play in this, or what part do you control, it flips the switch. Now, I'm not saying this in a demeaning way. I'm saying it because I'm like, if you give power to everything outside of you, you're never going to be able to achieve the goal that you want to. And you told me that this goal was important. You told me it was going to make an impact in your family. You told me it was going to change the generations forever. Well, then it's time to take control of the things we can control. So what are those things that you can control? And I leave it up to them to tell me what they control. I don't tell them what they can control. I let them do it. It's so much more powerful when you have them come to their answers too. All right. Next one is, what opportunity can you find in this? What opportunity can you find in this? No matter what happens, what the situation is, there's always an opportunity through it. So, for example, let's say that you get injured. All right. I was just talking to a life coach who was going to have hip surgery, and they're a life coach or a health and fitness / life coach. And they were like, man, I'm not going to be able to work out. I'm not going to be able to exercise. How am I going to be able to do this in a way that I'm not going to feel authentic when I'm sharing oh, this is the exercises you can do and everything, because I can't do it. I have to go through hip surgery because of X, Y, and Z. Now, my question to her was how could you actually make the fact that you had surgery make your business take off? And she thought for a second, and she's like, never thought of it that way. And it's because our head is getting us to be trapped. But if I can ask a question of what opportunity does this provide? Now you're like, well, I think this is great because what if there's other people out there who have had hip surgery before, and maybe I can really connect with them, or just connect with people who are maybe they're going through surgery too, but they need somebody who is going to be able to hold them accountable, maybe focus on the food a little bit more and recovery and sleep. And who's the best person to do that than me? Because I'm actually doing that right now. So what are some things that I can do on my channel that will actually help them and empower them to go out and still take care of their health, even though they can't exercise? And now it's reframed, and you get excited. You don't get excited because you have surgery, but you get excited at the possibilities of man, there's so many different possibilities here. Now, let me tell you, having worked through this myself, sometimes instantaneously it's hard to do. So being diagnosed with Crohn's disease and being told hey, your body is attacking your inner organs, and there's some things that you're not going to be able to do for the rest of your life. There's some foods that you're not going to be able to eat. You're going to go through moments where you don't have energy, where you do have energy, and then it's back and forth and all that kind of stuff. In the beginning, it was this sucks. I was a health and life and wellness and leadership coach, and I'm and look at me, how am I going to be able to help other people, right? And it was a matter of processing that and getting to the point where, you know what, how can I use this as an opportunity? Now, every time I can, I tell people hey, it doesn't matter what your situation, what it is you're going through, you can be healthier than you were yesterday. We don't compare ourselves to anybody else, because why would I compare me having Crohn's disease with somebody else who doesn't have Crohn's disease? It's not fair. It's not fair to them. It's definitely not fair to me. And instead, I figure, how can I be healthier myself? And now I have lost a bunch of weight. I've stayed in incredible shape. When I go to my doctor, he's what are you doing? How are you able to function this way as Crohn's disease? I'm oh, I just use it as my superpower. I don't use it as my kryptonite. I now use it as a reason why I can make a bigger impact, as opposed to what initially happened, which was I was feeling sorry for myself. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, but when you have a great life coach who can ask you a great question like that, what opportunity does this present? You'll see that it will start to change the outcome of the entire situation, and your outlook is the big deal. Okay. The next question I love to ask is, how could you do both with excellence? How could you do both with excellence? I told a little bit of story today on our life coach certification, because Kurt is jumping through becoming a certified life coach now. And he asked a powerful question in our group chat that we have for YouTube. So we have a bunch of people who work on our YouTube here. And somebody was asking, should I do this or should I do this? And Kurt put his coaching hat on and he said, I think we should do both. And I think we should do both exceptionally well. How could we do both? And it just got her to think, you're right. How about if we do this and this and this, and then we can test this versus this? Mind you, if Kurt hadn't said that, it would have been an or situation. Should I do this or this? And we knew it had nothing to compare it to. Instead, he put his hat on and he said, how can we do both with excellence? As a matter of fact, because we did both, it'll actually help us find more details than if we had just chose one. And then we chose two. And that's what's going to happen. We're actually going to manifest that we find out more information than ever because we were willing to see and figure out ways of excelling at both. So whenever I have somebody who's like, well, I have this and this, like, I don't know which one I should do, I ask them, how could you excel at both? How could you do both? How could the fact that you're doing one actually make the other one stronger? Oof, that's a great question, right? Because in reality, it can. But when I ask that question, it now opens up the belief of like, hey, it must be possible. And then you start exploring that. You don't need to have the answers on the call. But after the call, so many times I've gotten messages saying, that blew my mind, and here's how I'm going to do it moving forward. And they found their solution because I asked them that question, all right? Next question, which is question number 9. But if you did know the answer, what would it be? Like if you had to guess, what would it be? Sometimes you'll get into a conversation with somebody and they'll be asking you about specifics. Like, hey, what do you think I should do? This or this or this. Like, I just don't know what to do. And they'll be coming to me for the answers. Now, there's a caveat to this. Like, there's this thing between coaching and mentoring. All right. I know a lot of you guys have heard me talk about this before. If you haven't, definitely watch the video on our channel about coaching versus mentoring. But coaching is asking questions to help them come to their solutions. Mentoring is you telling them your solutions because you've been down that path before. There's beautiful places for both of these. As a matter of fact, a lot of the stuff I do on this channel is a mixture of both. Mentoring is like, oh, here's what I've tried that has worked. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. There's a million other ways, but this is what has helped me grow this business or help me with I mean, you're literally getting it now. I'm mentoring you by sharing these top 10 questions, right? Coaching would be, I would just be asking you questions and help you identify and find what's most important for you, all right? So when we talk about like, but if you did know the answer, that's me not letting you pull into my knowledge and resources. I want you to find yours. Here's the thing. Like what happens if YouTube is my jam? By the way, it is. I love YouTube. I'm not going anywhere. And you love Instagram and Facebook. And I tell you, you know what? YouTube's the jam. I mean, if you want to be anybody, you got to be on YouTube. Like if you want to influence people, you want people to buy your stuff, you have to be on YouTube. It's the only place that's actually, you can get leads and sales and all that great stuff. Now, when I do that, I leave the potential inside of them, what they love doing. And they're like, oh man, but I really was thinking about a podcast, or I was really thinking about like doing more reels, or I was really thinking like whenever I do this thing, it takes off. Now what I've done is I've told them what to do. And now they're like, well, I have to do this. It's just a matter of fact. Even if I don't sell it like I just did, and I just said YouTube, man, it's really worked well for me. Now everybody's like, YouTube, that's it. That's it. That's my easy button. Where's my Staples easy button? And what I don't realize is that I actually convince them to do it rather than finding the answers inside of them. So I allow them to guess. Some people are like, well, I can't guess. And I'm like, no, just guess. Like, you don't have to do any of this stuff. Like, we're just like throwing stuff out. But if you did know, but I don't know. But if you did know, like what would you say? Like if your friend was like, no, I need your advice. Like you have to give me something here. What would you tell them? And when you ask that question, you can pull out some amazing things, and it might not be the thing you end on, but it might be the thing that kind of like starts the conversation, and it tweaks their brain from this isn't possible to like, maybe there's a possibility in here. And when you do that, you really let their brain loose. And like when you get off the call, they're going to be able to find a million different solutions to that problem because you were able to help them unlock that. All right. All right. Question number 10. Question number 10 is, can you think of a way that this would make total sense to them? This is for my relationship people out there, especially. Okay, we have these things called a manual, which is a list of expectations of how we want somebody to react. And when they react or respond or take those actions, then we feel love or good or whatever. This manual it hurts us. It hurts us in a relationship. And how I can help most people see things differently is, can you think of a way that what your wife did, would make total sense to her? Could you think of a way of why your kids would have done that and said that? It would make total sense to them. What this does is it kind of separates you from the situation, and it allows you over the bird's eye view to go in and look at it and go, I could see exactly why my kids would think that that's the right thing to do. Or I could see exactly why that's what my wife or husband did. Or I could see exactly why the people under me, why they would do that. Maybe they're a little nervous about what's going to happen next. And when you see that little bit of a tweak, you now get it from their perspective, and it makes you a better leader. Because if you're only seeing it through your perspective and you're not seeing it from them, you really need to find a way of changing that perspective. That's why here on Modern Leadership, we say we see things differently. We don't just see it through our own lens. We see it through our leadership lens. We see it through the other person's lens. We think of different ways that this other person might be experiencing this, because it gives us more information and more knowledge so that we can actually help even more. So by asking them, can you think of a way that this would make total sense to them as to why they did it or why they thought it? It just separates you from the emotion of the experience, and it gets you to see it from the bird's eye view. Okay, that being said, I want to hear back from you guys. So these were the 10 questions. I'll go through them real quick. I want to hear from you in the chat. Which question is the one that you're going to focus the most on this week for yourself, for your clients, both? It doesn't matter. What's the one that spoke loudest to you that you want to focus on? Number 1 is, what specific goals do you want to achieve in your business and life, and why? Number 2 is, what are the main challenges that have been preventing you from achieving these goals? Number 3, what are some things you believe about yourself that feel that you're holding back? Number 4 is, what strategies or habits have worked well for you in the past? Number 5 is, how do you envision your ideal work-life balance, and what steps can you take to move closer towards that vision? Number 6, what part did you play in this, or what part of this can you control? Number 7 is, what opportunity do you find in this? Number 8 is, how could you do both with excellence? Number 9 is, but if you did know the answer, what would it be? Like, what would your best guess be? And number 10, can you think of a way that this or their actions would make total sense to them? Let me know in the comment section below. I know this is a little bit shorter than what we typically do, but I wanted to share these 10 best questions that I ask, not only to help people identify what they want, but help them get out of their own way so they can go out and crush it. All right. Now you might get to this point and you might be wondering, what are some of the questions that I don't want to ask my clients? Because if I ask them, I might actually steer them in a wrong direction or plant limiting beliefs. And I don't want to do that, because planting limiting beliefs will actually get them more stuck than when they first came to you. Don't worry, I've got you covered. I will leave it as a video at the end of this so you can tap and you can watch it. If not, go back into the notes, the description, and I will leave that video here. We talk all about the difference between planting limiting beliefs and asking questions so that you imprint those limiting beliefs on others and your family and your kids, and how to avoid that at all costs. It's a video that Teresa and I did that we take a deep dive into some of the questions that you can lead with that will actually take you down the wrong path. That being said, I appreciate you guys so much for making it here to the end of the video. If there's anything that I can do, please don't hesitate to reach out. I also want to give a huge shout out to all of our Inner Circle members. Super pumped to have you on the team and to do our first live Q&A next week on Friday. Thank you for all you do out there every single day, and keep leading from the front, team. All right, bye everybody.